Welcome to Good Faith Reads. I'm your host, Cally Chisholm at Good Faith Media. Good Faith Reads is a short podcast in which we focus on one of our book authors at Good Faith Media. We've published a considerable library of titles under our Nurturing Faith book imprint, and we invite you to check them out at goodfaithmedia.org/bookstore. Today's guest is Doug Bryan, author of Worship Anew in Babylon. Doug, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Cally, for this opportunity, and an additional thank you to Good Faith Media.
Your new book encourages us to sing songs of praise and worship in our times of exile. Can you explain this to our listeners and talk a bit about this theme of exile?
One point I would like to emphasize to the listeners and the would-be readers of Worship Anew in Babylon is the intended audience. Worship is both a corporate and an individual experience. You do not have to be a worship leader to find the material beneficial. The material is designed to provide devotional readings for individuals. The full title is Worship Anew in Babylon, Community and Personal Worship Resources. It can be used for personal spiritual enrichment and challenge. Babylon represents the exiles that many of us feel. We are not where we would like to be. Sometimes our exiles are made from our own choices, and sometimes we are exiled because of the collective choices of others. Exiles or estrangements may be found within families, within local communities, within congregations, within our nation, and within the various parts of the world. Estrangements or exiles may be the result where we live in places where we do not feel quite at home. We may experience exiles where there is a discrepancy between our cherished ideals and the reality of the life around us. The biblical narrative of Judah's experience in exile is a great example. They were transported to a new empire as the conquered. This new conquering nation had its own language, its religion, social norms, social roles, and customs. These particulars were far from the expectations, the norms of the Hebrews. No doubt among these exiled children of Abraham was the concern, how would they survive within their own identity in a pluralistic society? How would they accommodate? How would they assimilate? And how would they and their subsequent generations adapt? A common experience from Baptist history would be the plight of the English separatists who left the religious constraints of England for the greater freedom of religion in the Netherlands. However, they discovered that their children were becoming Dutch in their language, customs, and thinking. Despite the safety and the freedom and the tolerance of the Netherlands, they wanted to remain English. Portions of these groups would return to England and eventually to the Americas. No doubt the children of Abraham did not want their children and grandchildren to become little Babylonians. How could they in exile remain the children of Abraham? Today we face related questions or challenges. We live in a society that is increasingly divided among political, religious, socioeconomic, gender roles, and cultural differences. Mutual respect and civility have become rare and far from common. How do we navigate as citizens of the kingdom of God where we are increasingly becoming a minority with the resulting loss of diminishing power, wealth, and influence? Once we value the separation of church and state for the mutual benefit of both the church and the state, how do we reconcile the past, the present, and the future? We struggle in our exiles as we learn to sing new songs of praise and worship in a strange new land.
So what led to the development of this book? Where did inspiration strike for you?
Well, the work is a result of synthesizing various literary forms and experiences of 40 years of academic and church experience. In the last 25 years or so, I have composed a number of hymns. And these hymns were scattered in various locations, paper file folders and electronic ones. I knew that one day I needed to pull it all together or it would be forever lost. I had no illusion that my heirs would pull together my works. Timing was a second factor in the book's development. For almost 2 years, my life and the life of my wife were in a lockdown mode. We took the COVID threat seriously. I had lots of time to devote to reading, writing, and fortunately not arithmetic. I renewed the journey of reading and subsequent appreciation for the written word. As the idea of a book of hymns emerged, I realized the book needed to have substance beyond hymns alone. I had developed a growing appreciation of the lectionary and common human life experiences. I began to collect my existing compositions and create new ones to fill in the gaps with my goal of something more comprehensive. My moments of inspiration come from my firsthand experiences, such as human interactions, listening to sermons, reading from books, and personal reflections on what I saw going on in the news. Inspiration came from when we get it right, and inspiration came for when I saw things going wrong. You might find me taking notes on a church bulletin or a used envelope. These moments became my moments of inspiration, and the work began then of crafting that spark of inspiration into a light more sustainable than a mere spark, beneficial for myself and others, both inspiration and perspiration. Inspiration without work is dead. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, absolutely. So worship anew in Babylon is broken up into different sections based on various times or seasons of life. For example, you include times of benevolence and justice and times of departure. Could you break down for us how worship anew is organized?
The work is organized around what we would call chapters, or in my book, I call it times, which represent various common themes or events found in the life of the local congregation and in the lives of individuals. The chapters include times of Advent to Christmas, baptism and communion, benevolence and justice, biblical emphasis, creation celebrations, death and grief, dedication and renewal, departure, discernment, Easter and resurrection, family dedication and renewal, graduation, hospitality and invitation, Lent, ministry appreciation, patriotism, peace, Pentecost and missions, teaching and learning, Thanksgiving, and times for weddings and marriages. Within these times, there is a consistent pattern around the theme. There is a beginning summary, a selection of hymns, a selection of readings and responses, stories and reflections, and a prayer. Each of these sections of hymns, readings, and responses, and stories, and theological reflections has at least 2 entries per time, and opportunities are given to answer questions.
Well, it's amazing how much you're able to cover all of these times in people's lives, from the best to the worst times of life. I think it's amazing that you are able to cover all of those topics in this book. We'll be right back with more Good Faith Reads.
I'm Mitch Randall, CEO of Good Faith Media, and we're proud to announce a Better Way initiative. A Better Way, People of faith are too often cast as only narrow-minded and fundamentalist. This image is false, so let's not surrender the truth. A better way. This initiative from Good Faith Media will focus people of faith on giving voice to justice, to inclusion, to love. These values define the faith communities so many of us know. A Better Way initiative from Good Faith Media. Go to goodfaithmedia.org and click on Initiatives. There's more to tell.
Welcome back to Good Faith Reads. Today we're joined remotely by Doug Bryan, author of the Good Faith Media book, Worship Anew in Babylon. Doug, this is not your first book with Nurturing Faith. You wrote a novel called What the Willows Know in 2014. You have experience with both fiction and nonfiction writing. Do you have a preference? And secondly, could you talk about how the process of writing Worship Anew was different from your novel?
Yes, Cally. Interestingly, there is a thematic relationship between the two, the novel, What the Willows Know, and the resource, Worship Anew in Babylon. While the novel involves solving a mystery, it explores the theme of estrangement or exile. A professor is seeking to assist a woman who served as his family's caregiver and housekeeper, who he believes is wrongly accused of murder. Amidst the solving of the whodunit are themes of racism and religious estrangement. Worship Anew in Babylon is more planned with basic chapter or theme organizations, such as I mentioned before, hymns, dramatic reading, stories, theological reflections, and a prayer. Within each of these elements, the endeavor is creative. The plan involved a dynamic organization. Once the organization was formulated, I knew what was needed in each section. In the novel, I was always in the discovery process of what happens to the characters and the various resolutions. Both works are creative expressions of thoughts and ideas that take different forms of communication. How I author a novel or a play involves a simple formula. First, I begin with develop characters and pose a problem or conflict for them. From these characters and conflicts, I listen to the characters and write how they would respond to each other and to situations. While I know the initial beginning and ending, I discover the dynamics of the middle. It sounds simple, but involves work and rewriting. In nonfiction, I begin with broad ideas that need to be covered in the chosen subject. I develop an idea into smaller ideas and seek the best organization possible. Then I begin developing each of these ideas until the exploration is complete, and that only comes at the moment of submission and publication. The process is much like the study method I instructed my students. Begin with mastering the broad subject or vocabulary of the subject, spend as much time available in learning about the related information associated with the vocabulary or ideas, study one layer at a time before going on to the next. Which do I prefer? My preference is to be creative and to discover what is the best form of communicating that creativity to the listener or reader. I ask myself, what is worthy of being communicated? What is the best form of communication?
An important note to all of our listeners. We at Good Faith Media are always accepting book proposals. Our authors engage with an experienced team of editors, designers, and marketers to produce and sell books on a variety of topics. If you have a book proposal you'd like to run by us, head on over to goodfaithmedia.org/bookstore for more information. To close out our conversation today, I wonder if you might read a passage from the book that you think is critical for listeners to hear, either because it's representative of the book or because you think it's especially important for folks to hear right now.
I appreciate this opportunity to read from the book. I'm going to be reading a dramatic monologue, and it's called Born in the Year of Brown. And this would be found in the theme or the time of benevolence and justice. Born in the year of Brown versus the Board of Education, separate but equal was brought into question. Equality for all with limited or controlled associations. Southern Baptists campaigned for 1 million more in 54. Who were the million evangelized to be? Looking back, I'm not always proud of the world in 54. It was black and a cloudy world, not because of skin color, but because of the darkness of our heads and our hearts. Injustice, prejudice, poverty, bigotry, and ignorance were ingrained in our very thought processes. Our thinking patterns could not distinguish between light and darkness, between what should have been a rather simple right or wrong. We thought and acted in our safe and secure stereotypes. Cora was a real black woman, no stereotype. Cora, our maid, our nurse, our protector. Cora kept 3 wild white children for $3 a day, while my mother sewed buttons on the collars of Oxford shirts. Once Cora said, these were slave wages. Nobody paid by the day anymore but us, she said. Fired and rehired many times during the years, on and off again. A love-hate relationship. Cora combed my hair in the mornings before I went to school, always having trouble finding the part. Cora said I should see about a part cut into my hair. I told our barber, but he said only coloreds did that, but he used a different word for colors. I felt ashamed for having asked. I remember the people talking about the welfare system, especially food stamps. They would say, you better get it before the coloreds do, only they too used other words. Daddy drove a bread truck and kept his records in a little receipt box with carbon papers. I often played with his unused books, practicing my letters and words and drawing pictures. Once I wrote the words, I love Cora, on the cover of the book. Suddenly I remembered I had to hurry and find that one book among a stack of books that had been discarded in the trash, lest others read those words and make fun of me for my feeling that I had dared to put in print. As I grew older, I asked my daddy if it would be okay to eat at the same table with Cora. Daddy said it was okay to eat breakfast with Cora if it were something light like juice, toast, or cereal, but lunch was different. I didn't have to eat lunch at the same time with her at the same table. Cora came to work after Martin Luther King was assassinated. The television shows reported the news and reactions both day and night. We sat and wondered what the blacks would do. What would Cora do? Daddy told Mother that if Cora said too much, if she got too sassy, just give her money and send her home. All Cora said was, they killed our leader. They killed our leader. Cora's face was sad, but she uttered nothing more. Her silence focused on sprinkling water from her soda bottle on the unironed laundry, kept in the refrigerator for another ironing's day. We too kept silent. One winter, Cora had the flu and couldn't work for about a week. She had to be real sick to miss her $3 a day job. Our family took her a big plate of food for her to eat. Daddy didn't like the thought of her being cold, alone, and hungry. Her wood frame house moaned and creaked as we walked the bare floors. Each room smelled with the aroma of burning kerosene and grease. The wind could be felt inside her house. She said, thank you for the food. Cora had spells in which she went to sleep upright with her head bowed. Her head jerked up and then dropped down as she breathed noisily. She must have been an epileptic. We were not to awaken her when she had one of her spells. The spells always scared me. What if she didn't wake up? What was I supposed to do? She could talk with a white cigarette, a Pall Mall dangling from the corner of her mouth. After sitting for a few minutes watching morning television with us, she would say she had a lot of work to do ahead: dirty dishes, mopping floors, washing clothes, drying clothes in the line, ironing those clothes, and fixing food. She had to shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle, and roll. She liked music and she liked to dance. It came out in the newspaper from the Surgeon General that smoking could be hazardous to your health. I told Cora not to smoke, but she said her doctor offered her a cigarette while he smoked and examined her. Cigarettes were 30 cents a pack. Sometimes I would go to the store and buy them for her while she stayed home watching my younger brother and sister. Once I went and handed the man 20 cents, 2 dimes pulled from my front shirt pocket. He said Cora knew they were 30 cents. I told him that was all the money that I had that Cora had given me. I retraced my steps with Cora, my brother, and baby sister until we came to the spot where I had bent over to tie laces of my tennis shoes. Sure enough, in the dirt was the dime. It had fallen from my shirt pocket. Cora got her smokes that day. Cora sometimes talked about not having enough money. I told Cora that she could save money by not smoking. She told me that she had to live too. Cora had raised rough scars on her arm, knife wounds, I would imagine. Folks said they liked to cut each other up on Saturday nights, but it was sometimes said with a laugh. Once I climbed the apartment roof with some other kids. I fell when I was trying to come down. It knocked the wind out of me as I lay in the dirt and grass. I looked up and the police were called. I had to crawl to Cora, whose arms were outstretched for me. A neighborhood lady who was a nurse, she wouldn't let me move. The nurse said I might have internal injuries. It turned out all right. Once it was raining real hard as I went outside to ride the yellow school bus. I was wearing Cora's see-through galoshes that she had given me to keep my feet dry. Once Cora wanted to borrow some of my money. I told her I would lend her the money if she signed a contract with me in which, if she failed to repay, I was entitled to repossess everything she owned. She said it wouldn't be a real stamp with a contract. The only stamps I knew about were postage stamps and Easter seals. I told her that was okay with me, but she would have to buy the stamp. I don't remember if I ever loaned her the money. Cora came and went during those years. I remember when Julia came on television. It was the story of a black widowed nurse and her little boy. I think the little boy was named Corey. I was always afraid my parents would catch me watching a show about black people. What would they say? We had race riots in my high school. We had lockdowns. The police were called. It was not a pretty time. There was a veteran substitute teacher on the day of the riot. I remember her saying that she would substitute no more. It wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. When I went away to college, my daddy said that if I had a black roommate at the state university, I would have to come home. My roommate situation was okay. I didn't have to come home. When I came home from college, Cora would come to our house for a visit. She always asked me to talk the college talk. My mother would sometimes visit Cora and eat in Cora's house, much to the surprise of my more prosperous aunt and uncle. Cora died several months before my mother died, my last living parent. We began to dismantle the family household. Had Cora been alive, she would have been given the old washing machine and dryer. Cora died before she would get the old washer and dryer. Perhaps it was an unconscious token of what she had given us. It was a world of separations, separate hospitals, one for whites and one for blacks, different waiting rooms for coloreds and whites in the doctor's office. Whites could go inside the hash house to place their orders. Coloreds had a separate outside window to place their orders. Water fountains and bathrooms were separate. Coloreds rode in the back of the bus and sat in the balcony of the local theater. It was 7th grade before I was in a class with a black child. Her name was Bernice. Bernice was the only one in the English department who knew what an editorial was. I thought she had actually read them at home. While we read the funny pages in black and white print, an Iron Curtain existed in Europe. The Berlin Wall would be constructed. My sixth grade teacher said that the Berlin Wall would never fall. There were other walls in that South, strong and just as deadly, keeping people locked in their places, sometimes in very heated and hated places. I'm glad we no longer live in those places, and that the Berlin Wall would be broken by the people, sometimes slowly, brick by brick, and sometimes forcefully with sledgehammers. I wish I could have liberated Cora, but I had to be liberated first. Memories remain, shameful memories of how we were before we knew any better. Her memory and memories of the Berlin Wall are still alive. May our walls be broken one by one. When will full liberation come?
Wow, powerful. Our guest today on Good Faith Reads has been Doug Bryan, author of Worship Anew in Babylon. The book, along with many other titles, is available as both a print book and ebook at goodfaithmedia.org/bookstore. Doug, we appreciate you being our guest today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and God bless.